Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sabbath at Midnight. I am your host, Lionel Tavares, and is always blessed to be here by the Lord Jesus Christ himself. Today, we are welcoming back our very good friend who's been on here multiple times, Mr. Gary Wayne. Today, we're going to talk about a little something different. I know we have a series going on with the Seven Sages and all that stuff, but today we're going to talk about something a little different. Maybe something you haven't really heard him talk about before, and we're going to talk about the origins of superheroes. Like, where does the history come from? Where does the idea come from? Like, pretty much superheroes are deities. They're hybrids, so I would love for Gary Wayne, because he has the knowledge, to break this down to us. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is superheroes, the origins of them. But before we get into that, Gary Wayne, go ahead and introduce yourself again, and let us know where you can find all your stuff.
Yeah, so happy to be back with you guys again and talking to your audience. And I think we will again talk about a few things that will get people's attention and connect dots that they haven't connected before, but all of it towards, understanding how this world works and why it's important to understand Ecclesiastes 1, where it says that there is nothing new under the sun, and what was will be again. And as you get on into verse 18, it talks about, the more you learn in terms of your search for knowledge and wisdom, the more sorrow you will get. And that's because of the astonishing things that you're going to learn. So you need to be able to deal with what you're going to learn as well. So for people who aren't familiar with me, I am a Christian contrarian. And I have authored 2 books. I'm working on book 3 as well. The first book is The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants Plan to Enslave Humankind. And it's got about 1,700 ratings up on Amazon over the, 8 or 9 years that it was out. And what's interesting about that book is it connects a whole bunch of different things on how the world works, and actually will give you some of the language and stuff in terms of what you're going to connect dots with on the things that we're going to talk about today. And it also sells more books every year. So it's not one of those books that has a shelf life, because it's written in a way where it's going to be resonating all through this generation. And I think if indeed we're in the fig tree generation, then even more so. So book 2 just released on March 12th. It's called The Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2. And the subtitle is How Understanding Prehistory and Giants Helps to Define End-Time Prophecy. So again, on that, nothing new is under the sun. What was will be again, like in the days of Noah. Whatever was going on before the flood and just after the flood, in the days of Noah, 350 years after the flood and 600 years before the flood, it's going to be like that again today. And we're just catching up to that technology. So all things, when you start looking at it in that sort of perspective, are leaves a lot of things that we need to start preparing for, because people aren't going to prepare for this, and this show will help to do that. So if you're interested in what those books are about, you're not familiar with it, I have a generous excerpt at my website on the Genesis6conspiracy.com. That's www.genesis6 with the number 6conspiracy.com. And on that website, I have a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book 1 and all 84 chapters of book 2. And both books are loaded with information. You don't have to read one to read the other, but if you read one, you're going to want to read the other. It's kind of written in that sort of way. So there's a little bit of overlap, not a whole lot. So these books are not short books. Book 1 is just over 800 pages, and book 2 is just under 800 pages. And there aren't any loose sentences or any loose paragraphs. It's all information coming at you all the way through the book. So book 1, as I said, or book 2, as I said, released on March 12th, and it's got, as I looked this morning, 19 5-stars up already. No ratings underneath 5 stars, so very happy about that. And I know the first couple of printings have sold out. And you can also get a signed copy if you want to get a signed copy from me for either book through the website as well. You go to buy now, book 1 or book 2. And if you wanted to buy both, I have not got my website guide to be able to, through Stripe, to get it to bundle the two separate purchase pages, but let's say if you wanted to buy one of each, just buy two of one, send me a email and tell me you want one of each, and I'll do a signed copy on each. And there's a discount for multiple books. So it's important to keep that in mind, or if you want a matching pair for your bookshelf. And if book two is anything like book one, then people are keeping it handy on their bookshelf for almost like an encyclopedia to go and find that topic. And it's a little easier in my books because I write short chapters, so they average 4 to 6 pages, and you don't have to start at chapter 1, but it's helpful. And if you do jump around, that's fine, because they're all written as mini stories, but there's information that will keep coming up as the book unfolds. So if you're into, let's say, chapter 61 or something, and something comes up, you can sort of go back to the chapter where that would have got up. And the book is also available from my website, which is the easiest way to link over to get it elsewhere. So if you want to get the Kindle edition, there's a link over to Amazon for the Kindle edition for both books. They're both available on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. I have links for that, and also BarnesandNoble.com. And if you are buying a book off of the website from me, there's a Canadian page, there's a U.S. page, and then there's a page for the rest of the world. Make sure you click on the right book and the right page that you belong to. And also, if you're not living in Canada, and most people in the world don't, as I do, we're a very small population, if your card gets declined, it could be that the credit card company has a security feature in there to stop fraud for international purchases, and that's usually what happens if it does get declined, so I'll just mention that. So anyways, that's who I am, and I call myself a contrarian because I tend to verify things for myself and not just take the word of what other people say. And so I do that in all of my research, both within the Bible and outside the Bible. And then if it's outside the Bible, I measure it against what it says in the Bible, and if it diverts what the Bible says, I might look at it for, that's interesting, but I don't use it for my conclusions.
All righty, has a lot of information, and I do own one of the books, and it is exactly what he said. It's very informative. I mean, you have to go back in that book and pick things apart, but it's a very good book.
Yeah. I have people who tell me they've read it 6 or 7 times, and they just say they just keep learning more every time they do. And there's just so much information. You can't remember it all. I can't remember it all. And that's why I have a Kindle version of both of my books, so I can do the word search as well.
No, it's a solid book, and I'm about to get the second one once I get paid here in a couple of days. But yeah, it's a very, very good book. Of me and my father read it ourselves, and we had you on the show. For those of you who've been my audience, you already know how Gary works. Guy's a mastermind guy. He's a human encyclopedia, so ain't nothing new but genius here. So, Gary, with all this superhero stuff, I wanted to ask you, what would be a good place to start? And before you answer that, my opinion would be, does this start with the occult?
Oh, it's all about the occult.
Oh, so let's start right there then. If
it's
that's
everything. It's got nothing to do with Christians. It's everything about who we fight against, the visible ones and the invisible ones. And it's the invisible ones who created these original superheroes. So in chapter 1, just out of a good place to where I thought I would, in book 1, where I thought I want to ease people into kind of where we're going to go, I started, off with the heroes of old and linking them back to superheroes. Oh. The heroes of Greek mythology were giants. So Hercules, son of Zeus, and a female named Alchemy, was a hero and also known as a Titan. And so Theseus, Perseus, Iapetus, the antediluvian sea god, produced Gog, Magog, and Albion, and all names that are used again after the flood. So hero was also what they called the giants of Uruk, like Gilgamesh and the hero epics of Gilgamesh. And a hero was understood as a demigod. as the offspring, as the spurious offspring of a god or a goddess and a human male or a female. Biblically, we only get male gods or fallen angels mating with humans that are recorded in Genesis 6:4, where they produce these giants. But in polytheism, as with, let's say, Gilgamesh out of Uruk, he was the father, his father was King Lugalbanda of Uruk, king before Gilgamesh took over, his son, and the fertility goddess Nin. And the Greek mythology has numerous accountings of goddesses mating with human males to create giants. So biblically, we only get the male version, but one deduces if you can take a form and as a male and can produce offspring, if you took the form of a female, which the pantheon seems to indicate they could do, then they could probably do it as well. So it doesn't really matter whether or not the female ones created them or not. I'm just mentioning what the polytheist accounts are, but we do know biblically from Genesis 6 that giants were created before the flood, and giants also show up as Rephaim after the flood. And so these are the demigod offsprings, and they had super talents. They were superhumans. They were superheroes. And so they had powers that were passed on through that DNA that were not necessarily the same. And so if we start to look at superheroes today, the first major popular one is Superman. And he has that S on his chest for not just a hero, but a superhero, because you can have heroes that don't have special powers, right? You can have heroes that do things in war. You can save people, but you don't have those superpowers that are associated with the superheroes that comes from the celestial mafia godfathers. The fallen angels are the gods in polytheism. And so Superman has an S on his chest, as I said, and it's like a serpent. It's very snake-like when you look at the shape. And that is what I think a reflection back to the order of angels that they are taking Superman back to, which is the seraphim angels, which are watcher angels. And there's 4 groups of watchers. Seraphim is thought by some to be at the highest. In book 2, I'll make an argument that maybe archangels are higher, or maybe there was a shift in that positioning. And they were serpent-faced, 6-winged dragon angels or serpent angels. And that's why you have all of these gods around the world in antiquity that are depicted as serpents or dragons, dragon creator gods. You have the Area gods of Canaan and Egypt, which are again flying serpents. You have the Kishamaya and the Aztecs with the plumed and the feathered serpent. You have the Nagas. This is a standard all around the world. And so you have that S on there. And that's really interesting because Clark Kent is the name he takes in his sort of alias or disguise, but his real name is Kal-El, K-A-L. and E-L.
Oh wow! I never put that together because El is like the Elohim, the title. Yeah, I just never noticed that.
Yeah, and El is the father, parent god, head chief god of the Canaanite pantheon before the flood, who also created giants, and I talk about in book 1. And his son is Baal, who rules the council of the gods after the flood, and he creates the Rephaim after the flood, more heroes, and he goes to the pit prison as well. So this seems to be based on the Canaanite and the Hebrew wording for the parent god, male god of the Canaanite pantheon. And as I talk about in book 1, El was a morbid, vicious giant who created multiple giants through multiple females. He was a big producer of giants before the flood. And so Superman, Kal-El's father's name is Jor-El. This is the house of El. And this is, the House of Dragon, as people would understand that today with a lot of the TV shows and movies, and that this is definitely part of the House of Dragon. There's many bloodlines within the House of Dragon, but this is one of them that they're sort of allegorizing. And so, yeah, we need to look at these superheroes as being part of this whole mythos that is come about, and it absolutely exploded in the last 20 years. And so, they're talking about, the metaverse, right? Where all of these things and beings, they flow back and forth between. That's multi-dimensional. Meta is the term for Enoch, son of Cain in this case, versus son of Jared. And there's two Enochs in the Bible, and we need to know that. So I like a lot Enoch book 1. I'm not very good on supporting Enoch 2 or Enoch 3. And the Book of Giants, we don't have enough of it, but it seems pretty much consistent with Book 1. But Book 2 and Book 3, they kind of go into polytheist things, and a lot of polytheist concepts and gods that are listed in those. And Metatron is the name that Enoch, son of Cain, he is turned into a god or a son of God, and raised to a son of man status, as in the Word of God, who became flesh status because of this knowledge. And so, when you see this term, the metaverse, is in there, he is a source of a lot of the knowledge that was channeled through him through the fallen angels, the celestial mafia godfathers. And so understand when Facebook, whose original Facebook logo is a representation of Tubal-Cain in the secret societies and the polytheist religions, and then they create the larger company, the parent company, as Meta, and they're talking about the metaverses with all this angelic technology that's being developed. Understand we're catching up to the days of Noah. And they're going to use those terms, and they're going to do everything in plain sight. So you just have to understand the language that they're talking about. And if you look at, like, say, DC Comics and Marvel Comics, where a lot of this, first started, and now that Disney owns it, understand that Disney was a Rosicrucian and a Freemason, and he promoted all sorts of things in the occult. Everything they did was essentially on the occult, their history, the types of beings, and their genealogy. So when you see all sorts of fairies and things in there, and giants and all sorts of other things that they do, they're just producing narratives in that fairy tale concept, where they're telling you their history. You just don't know all of the allegories and the taciturn language that's used in symbolism in those stories that they tell, and they're great storytellers. But those are not Christian values. Those are not Christian beings. Those are all out of polytheism, as with the superhero is. So, in the second book of Enoch, and I said I'm not a real fan of the second book of Enoch either, because it has gods like Zeus in there and names like that you just wouldn't have biblically. If they're going to do a god or a goddess, they're going to give you the name, and they're going to use that name. So they do mention, like, Baal. Baal is a transliteration for El, and it means Lord God or Master God. And again, the secret societies like to say that's meaning that the God of the Bible is part of that whole fallen angel thing, as they reduce God to an angel status. So in second Enoch, when they're talking about these giants, when Enoch, son of Cain, Metatron, as he's called in Enoch 3, goes to the fifth heaven, it's talking about these giants. And so I just want to read a little passage here, and I pulled it up, and as I said, it's in Enoch 2, Enoch's ascent to the fifth heaven. and it's talking about the Gregory, which is Greek for watcher. And it's also talking about Satanael, which is probably a Satan, or the Ha-Satan, as you would understand that Hebrew. And there's this conversation going on, and then it goes on to say, and the Lord's throne, the place Hermon, E-R-M-O-N, that's Mount Hermon, and broke through their vows the shoulder of the hill Hermon, Mount Hermon, and saw how God are the daughters of men. I saw how good are the daughters of men. They took them as their wives and befouled the earth with their deeds, and in all times of their age were lawless and promiscuous. Giants were born, and marvelous big men and great enmity. It's that word marvelous that Marvel Comics takes their superhero name from. And DC Comics is basically the District of Columbia and probably a whole bunch of other alliterations. But Columbia, whether or not it's in that imagery as Columbia, whether or not it is in the Statue of Liberty, whether or not it is in Diana of the Roman and Etruscan pantheon, these are all queens of heaven. And these are fertility goddesses, and they're the same in each of the pantheons, with offspring gods after the flood and with parent gods before the flood. And these also produce giants in their belief system, as I had mentioned. So they will, as I say, they will pull all of this imagery and meaning into the names of their companies and into the imagery and the icons that they show that represent their company, because they know Christians don't know what's going on out there. So it's important to understand that these are wonderfully written stories and narratives, but understand them for what they are. So I watch them and I just look for the allegories and the history and the things that they're trying to spin out there. So superheroes, as we look at them today, you might have another one that's quite famous, which came right after Superman, and that was Batman. And he doesn't quite have the same passed on superpowers, but obviously he has some sort of association with some extra strength and things like that.
Yeah, I was about to say, really quick, I was about to say, I don't know if you really read deep into I used to be into comic books a lot, Gary, and I remember reading like Batman, even though he's a human, he is like a genetic, in some of the comic books, he's like on like steroids, but like super steroids that make him stronger, make him faster, stuff like that. So he's kind of really not a human, like kind of like you're saying, he's like a superhuman, but he's not like powers. It's more like human made technology.
Yeah, he's kind of like maybe Nimrod, who became a mighty one, right? Yeah, and it's the technology that's being used to enhance that. Just as you get into the chimera aspect, where they get all sorts of different types of parts of the bodies and different types of cryptoids that are out there that, generally without some sort of technology wouldn't produce that. That's also part of the superhero mythos. So Batman and Robin, two birds. And they're going, what the heck are birds doing in superheroes, right? Well, there's a interesting group of demigod giants in the Kishimaya Popol Vuh, and they're called the Xibalba that I write about in book 1. I didn't write about the House of Bat, the Camazots.
Oh, I know where you're going, Gary. Do you remember when you did our first episode really quick? You did our first episode with the Halloween.
Yeah.
And I think you showed me a picture of this bat creature, right? Is this the same one we're talking about? Okay. The Mayan, the Mayan, like you said, yeah.
So, yeah, if somebody were to Google CAMAZOTZ, Camazots, you would bring up this Batman outfit that he wears. That is some sort of depiction of a artifact that was found. And Camazots is translated out of the Kishimaya Popol Vuh as the House of the Bat. And they are a branch of the Xibalba. So now you have these bird superheroes. Well, what the heck is that all about? Well, what's interesting is you have another Watcher that has 4 faces, and this one is a cherubim, and he has the face of a man as one of the faces. He has the face of a lion. He has the face of an ox or a bull. I think more bull than ox, but that's my speculation. And the face of a bird. Could sometimes depicted as an eagle, just as eagles are depicted as angels in the book of Revelation and some of the translations. And you also have the owls, that these Zabelba are bird-faced ones. And you also have falcon gods. So you have this bird sort of imagery. So if you have a fallen angel that's a seraphim who's going to take the form of a serpent and is going to produce offspring, they're going to look just like them because they pass on the DNA. And that's why you have within the superheroes all of these crazy kinds of serpent superheroes, most of them evil, but lots of them. So one needs to be aware of that. But getting back to the bird Nephilim, so to speak, of the ancient heroes, you have like the penguin. You have Falcon, you have Hawkman, you have Robin, Red Robin, you have Hawk, you have Nighthawk, and all these, there's more. You could go on and on. You have the Penguin, if I didn't mention that one, as a really crazy one out of Batman as well. And so these are creatures that would be created in antiquity through a cherubim, when they take a human form, they only take one of those faces. And when they had, as watchers, sex with a human female, then they would create a bird-like giant. So do we have anything else around the world that we might look at that as? And I would say absolutely yes. And you have something called the Tengu, Tengu. These are the gods of Japan and China and India and Southeast Asia. And they're feathered gods and feathered demigods. So you can have Tengu of heaven and Tengu of earth, just as you can have a watcher in heaven, and also the giants in Sumeria and elsewhere around the world were called watchers. They were called the Anunnaki of heaven and the Anunnaki of the earth. You have the Titans of heaven and the Titans of earth in Greek mythology. That's a standard constant. And similar in the Hebrew language, where you have the fallen ones, which is the Nephilim with an A, as the fallen ones, just as that word Nephal is used for Satan in Isaiah 14 when he falls from heaven, is the source word for Nephilim, the word used to translate giants before the flood versus Rephaim after the flood. And so you have the Nephilim of the earth and the Nephilim from heaven. So you have a standard on that. And you have these Tengu warriors that were warriors and priests and source of the martial arts in the Southeast tradition, like in the samurai tradition and everything to do with that. And just as, again, that's the same type of god producing the Kamazots, the Batman, the Zabelba in the Kishimaya. And in Judges 7:28, interestingly enough, we get a king Oreb of the Midianites, he was, along with another king of Oreb was Zeb. And I might bring him up when we get into other kinds of superheroes.
Yeah.
But typically it's not unusual for these kings to have patronymic names and titles after a warrior tradition, a bloodline, a patriarch, whether it's a celestial mafia godfather or a patriarch for a giant tribe. But that Oreb means raven, and this was a giant king of the Midianites who was in partnership to take on Israel after Israel had conquered the land. And the Midianites, in the conquest of the covenant land, there were 5 king pentathlets that were allied with King Og and King Sihon, the giant kings of Mount Hermon, in the Eastern campaign. And Moses takes care of that part of the Midianites and their participation in the alliance after dealing first with Sihon and then with Og, and then Moses turns to deal with the Midianites before he dies. And before Israel crosses the Jordan River. And you also get these 2 kings in Psalms 83:11. So again, we don't really get that sort of connection there, but we do understand cherubim, and we understand that the sons of God, which is understood as angels, and I have a great document on that. People want to get a hold of me. I'll show you how we know the sons of God are angels and not humans. And then I got another document where I go on the flip side of it and say, how do we know that the sons of God are not humans and that they're angels? And I take all of the arguments, and every time you take on any one of the arguments biblically, you find out they're not humans. But that's just me sort of going a little bit down the road of, I want to have people understand that everything we're talking about, we can talk about biblically, and we can prove what we're saying. And whether or not people want to agree with that or not, that's for you to decide. What I'm doing is I'm providing information for you, and you can take that information and use it as you see best. So you also get like Thunderbird gods in First Nations in North America as well. So this is, again, a worldwide standard of these bird-like gods.
So, he has a lot.
One other thing.
Go ahead.
One other thing that sort of gives us to it. So we know about the Anunnaki, who also produced giants. And so when we see reliefs with the Anunnaki, you have these winged beings with the human face and a beard, kind of like a Gilgamesh. Look, dark-haired, big curly beards, and wings. You get the same depiction, only with an eagle's head.
Another bird.
That's how the cherubim appeared, with a single face. And whatever face they would have appeared with, then that's what their offspring would have looked like. So when you have superheroes, they put like on, originally ones in like Batman, they wore costumes, right? But as they develop the mythos, you're seeing that these are not costumes. These are part of their DNA in that look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely say now, but even though you're saying that, it's all costumes, I don't know if you like keep up with the Marvel movies now. Like nowadays I watch them, but now when I watch them, I'm more like trying to break it down. Like, what are they going to put in this, And I'm starting to notice the superheroes are not really like, they're starting to change their origin stories a lot in these new movies. So like, in the other movies, Batman, he was a regular boy, and, he saw his parents get killed, something snapped in his head and he turned into this guy. Well, with the new Batman that just came out with that guy from Twilight, I forgot his name, they changed the whole story. Now it's all related to like a shaman and witchcraft, where he's getting his alter ego from. So now it's not just a guy who has mental trauma. It's a guy who's into witchcraft, because the new Batman is based off a comic book that goes back to a shaman.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the stories are changing the origins of it.
Well, and understand that the giants populated not only the Royale, AL, a transliteration of EL for the Kings of God, Rex Deus, as I call them in Book 1, Kings of God as well, but they also populated running the armies, right?
Yeah.
And so they were the great warriors and the generals. And you also have these giants as these sages, as these priests, as these magi. They populated the ruling class of the religion as well. And so it's important to understand that a shaman is a priest. So it's in that same sort of tradition, just as a clown would be another spin-off of that trickster spirit tradition of both the invisible trickster spirits and the trickster spirits of the shamans, where they would get power from a trickster spirit that would be like a demon, or not like, it is a demon. So When we're talking about the serpentine superheroes, you have, just to give a few of them, not only Superman, who I mentioned, but you also have the Red Serpent, King Hiss, Nine-A, Cobra Man, King Cobra, Cobra Khan, Serpento, Copperhead. Copperhead would be the description of a seraphim angel in their color. So this is, again, if anything that's sort of serpentine would come from a seraphim superhero in terms of the history and the genealogical connections that they're trying to make, just as with the Birdmen. So I probably would be remiss if I didn't mention the Lion Men superhero basis. And so you have lion superheroes, of course. You have Catwoman in Batman, the female giant.
You got Sabretooth.
Reflection in that. What's that?
Sabretooth?
Yep, that's another one. Yeah. Black Panther.
Oh, yeah.
And in the Egyptian tradition, you have a cat or a lion goddess named Bast, who created all sorts of different creatures. And that's, if you look at what's being talked about in Black Panther, that is what they're communicating there. They actually have Bast in the movie, and would be very much equivalent to, Mahis, and other lion or lioness goddesses in the Egyptian pantheon. You also have the Lion King in a fairy tale. You have Black Panther. You have Aslan in the Narnia tales, based on Narashima, the Hindu pantheon, which was a lion demigod, and also received a occult Christ consciousness, which is Aslan was an avatar. An avatara of the avatar, Vishnu. And Vishnu used many over his reign, apparently, to give extra powers or wisdom. Buddha was an avatar of Vishnu as well. You also have Lion Man as a superhero, Griffin, Red Lion, Thundercats. You have the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. It just sort of goes on and on and on. So anything that has that lion aspect, that would go back to a Cherubim Watcher again. And just as you have on the coat of arms, you have lions, you have dragons, and you have unicorns, which is a allegory as a angelic being, which is a cherubim. I won't go through that whole sort of scenario because it's a long explanation. I understand there's a mythos of the unicorn as a physical chimera creature created for horses for the giants, both before and after the flood. But there's also, as in the chariot of the gods, it's a unicorn that's pulling the chariot of the gods, like Apollo in Greek mythology and other gods, as the cherubim do in the vision in Ezekiel 1, 3, and 10, as the Book of Psalms says, the cherubim pulls God's chariot in that imagery. So you have these lion superheroes as well. And biblically, we know cherubim have one face as a lion. And you have that as just sort of interwoven into the royales and interwoven into the superheroes, because they're all part of the same bloodlines. And biblically, we have the lion men of Moab, which were mighty ones. And you have the lion-like Gadites that are, in my view, lion Nephilim. And you have lion Nephilim both before and after the flood. And you might look at an angel in the occult that they name as Ariel, as being, and I talk about Ariel in book 2, and it means lion of God, just as Aryan, or as in Indo-Aryans, or as post-Diluvian and antediluvian giants. Ari is the first 3 letters of Ariel. So we don't get a loyal angel named Ariel, but typically the names of the fallen ones are, they were loyal at one time. So whether or not they were able to keep their names going forward, I don't know how that whole thing works with the rebellion, but understand that Ariel is understood as an angelic being in the occult, and with that El prefix, it probably has a connection to the fallen ones and to Nergal. And the reason why I say we can look at that as Ariel is that's a Hebrew word for lion as well.
Yep.
And lion of God.
That is really quick, Gary. That's funny you say that, because I just spoke to a rabbi about a couple months ago, because I'm a personal trainer. I think I told you this. I'm a trainer. I'm a boxing coach, and I train a lot of people, and I train a lot of Jewish people. And the rabbi will sometimes come by to like do this blessing to my Jewish clients. They just show up, wherever they're at, they just show up, right? And he started talking to me, and he told me my name in Hebrew is Ariel, because my name is Lionel. He said, yeah, your Hebrew name is Ariel. So I thought that was pretty crazy you brought that up. It was a coincidence.
It would probably just more, Ariel is strictly as a lion as well.
My name is Lion Al,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And my name is spelled Lionel.
Yeah. I don't think that's a coincidence in terms
Crazy,
of the etymology of the name.
I hope I got clean blood, Gary. You're scaring me over here, man.
Well, innocently inherited characteristics don't determine salvation, but it's so would be scary thought, wouldn't it? So we actually have a god in the Bible named Nergal, Nergal, and it's a Sumerian god that's comes out of the Sumerian pantheon, who is depicted in the Bible as an Avim god that's worshipped, and as a warrior god of Mesopotamia. And this was a lion-faced god as it was depicted. And so we have another link biblically that this may indeed be possible. And we also have the lion-like men. And then you get a name in the War of Giants in Genesis 14, King Arioch, which means lion-like, out of Mesopotamia, who worshipped Nergal. And it says probably a bloodline, royal bloodline, with Nergal as being the mafia godfather. So again, we have this direct connection that goes back to the Bible. And so, so you can get in the Strong's lexicon, you can have number 738, which is Ariy for Ari, which is just lion. And then you have 739, Ariy, and it's got like an apostrophe EL also for lion. And it means also heroic as well, as in heroes of old, the mighty ones, the heroes of Sumeria and Greece. And as I said, Ariel by definition also means lion of God. You also have in the Egyptian pantheon as well, not only Bast and Mahis, but you have Sekhmet and Apidamak as other lion-faced gods. And then you have in ancient Sumeria, and I think this is, probably ones that were more before the flood, but there may have been ones like this after the flood. They have something called the Urmalu, which was a lion race of warriors, and they had lions' heads and mid-bodies. And then you also have ones that are depicted with lions' bodies and human faces. So they seem to have had nuances into those ones that were created. So
those ones sound uglier than the other ones.
Yeah, King Habada of the Cedar Forest, he had the face and the paws of a lion. This is where some of this technology that may also be part of it as well, with DNA manipulation. He had bull horns and vulture claws and a serpent's tail, and he was covered in snake-like scales. So this was a Greek chimera, with the head of a lion, and also a goat's head on its back and a serpent tail that breathed fire.
Oh my God.
This was the one. This was the king that Enkidu and Gilgamesh went to the Cedar Forest, which is on Mount Hermon, to kill. And he was created by Anki as one of the terrible ones that are talked about as the terrible ones, as in Ezekiel 32. People want to have a great series on Ezekiel 32, and I cover the terrible ones off in book 2. So just to show that there's a lot of connections here that are, we need to understand the world that people are describing to us. And I just want to get in through the different kinds, and then I know there's a whole bunch of different ways that we could go. So there's dog superheroes.
Oh, yeah, that too. The little super dog. Really quick, I just want to warn you, my aunt's going to pick up my sister in about 20 minutes. The dog might bark for like 30 seconds, but we'll cut that out. I just wanted to warn you. That's fine,
yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I won't go through the complete dog mythos, but I have a 3-part series on it if people want to get a hold of me through my website.
But you have dog Superman, really quick. Superman has a pet dog that's a superhero, or am I tripping?
Yeah, that's more like from a version of it, but more like this. It would be more of a Cerberus, right?
Okay.
A monster watchdog in history, in Greek history, that guarded the entrance to Hades. They're called the Hounds of Hades. So I think that's a little bit more like that. And then there's another one that was a multi-headed dog as well, that had 3 heads and a serpent's tail and snakes coming out of all over its body.
That's the one that guards Hades, right?
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what that's based on. But again, it could be more DNA manipulation in the technology that was being applied. So man-wolf, timber-wolf, wolverine, superdog, wolfbane, underdog, hyperdog, Rex the Wonder Dog, the Ace, the Bat Dog, which is kind of a combination again.
Wolfman.
So, yeah, so this is not uncommon. And what's interesting about dog Nephilim, they're again both before and after the flood, and there's sightings right up to this day, and again right up even inclusive of St. Christopher in the Greek Orthodox version. They depict him with a dog's head coming from North Africa. And I walk through all of that in the series, but how that sort of comes about, if you want to look from ancient times, is Anubis would be a jackal god.
Okay.
And or a dog-like god, and with a dog's head or a jackal head. And he created huge amounts of dog Nephilim warriors. And so the genre of dog men or dog Nephilim is cynocephaly.
Yep.
And the city that the Greeks called the location where Anubis's offspring lived, and there were thousands and thousands of them.
And really quick, Gary, really quick,
called,
for the audience that don't believe this, we can even get this information from Alexander the Great and Christopher Columbus and other famous people in history that talked about seeing these things and actually capturing them, for those of you that think we're crazy.
Yeah, so Hesiod, Herodotus, Pliny, Cestius, Marco Polo, Giovanni, Columbus, as you said. There's accounts all over the world: India, China, Japan, Africa. So yeah, and I document all of that if people want to get that document from me. And so the city that these dog warriors lived in initially was called Sinoopolis, meaning dog city. Now, what's interesting biblically, we get in with the Avim gods again, a god named Nibaz, Nibaz. And Nibaz, when you take that back to its Hebrew, means a barking dog. And he was depicted with a human body and a dog's head. So we do get Nibaz as an Avim god in 2 Kings 17:31. And it means, as I said, the barker. So, and the Avim Nephilim, or Rephaim, I should call them more accurately, they worshipped dog idols. So again, biblically, there's some connections here where we see it really sort of understood in a whole different level in the polytheist version. So we want to be sort of recognizing as to what we can account biblically and say, we better not take that off the table, and that this may be coming back at us as well.
No kidding.
And so Caleb in the Bible, which was a fighter during the time of the Exodus, it was understood as the word dog, and he was a mercenary, just as dog warriors were notorious mercenaries throughout history. And there's also in that Midianites version that we talked about in Judges, where we had Orab, we have Zeb, whose word means in Hebrew wolf, just as wolf is part of the dog understanding as well. So, so we have lots of connections there with the dogs as well. So I just wanted to make sure we had that covered off.
Really quick.
And I'll just do a couple other little things here just out of interest, and because we can go off and now into different kinds of other kinds of superheroes and types of movies and things like that. I just wanted to make sure I laid down enough to cover off what they're saying. So in the Enuma Elish, Tiamat, like Bast, created all sorts of different creatures. And in the Enuma Elish, it talks about she created the Hydra dragon, multi-headed dragon of the sea, hairy heroes like the Gilgamesh, great demons, whatever they are, they're not described in that bad translation into English, and I haven't been able to check that out through the various Akkadian or the Sumerian languages yet. But the savage dog, the scorpion man, which is the Akrabamalu and the Gerdabalu, which incidentally have almost an identical description of these scorpion beings coming out of the abyss prison in Revelation 9. In my new book, I give the descriptions of the scorpion type of beings out of prehistory and the creatures coming out of Revelation 9. I think they're degraded cherubim, by the way, but that's identical. I put them side by side so that you can see the descriptions. They also have Fishman, like Aquaman, and the Bullman, as in also another head of the cherubim. Now, this isn't from the Bible, but I just want people to sort of understand here. And we don't know what all of the different kinds of the angels look like. We get what a seraphim is, we get what the cherubim is, we get what the Ophanim is, we get an archangel with a human face, but we don't know who the Icarus, what they looked like. We don't know who Dunamis looked like. We don't know who Escusia looked like. And all of the other types of angels, we don't know what they look like in the higher orders. And I give that angelic order, and I link those names out of the Greek into the English in my new book. And the reason why I use the Greek on it is because they mistranslate these things several times and they confuse the different orders. So like Dunamis and Excusia are translated as powers, as being the same angels, and then they use different names instead of powers for those ones, and they have other names that they associate. So you need to understand the order. You need to take it back to the Greek. I lay that out for you in book 2. So understanding we don't know what faces some of these other angels had, then we can now look to something interesting in a Gnostic gospel of the 12 dungeons of the parent gods that were sent to the pit prison at the time of the flood.
Okay. I never heard of that. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, so the rulers of the 12 dungeons and their names. The first ruler who has a crocodile's face, and his name is Enkthonin. And I won't go through all the names because people won't know the names anyways. So in the Greek gods, you have Sopek as part of the gods of Egypt, and the Ogdod parent gods, they're mostly serpentine, but there are other faces in there as well, as they're depicted. The second dungeon has a cat's face or a lion's face. And the third one has a dog's face. And his name was Arkarok. And the fourth dungeon has a serpent's face. And the fifth one has a bull's face. And the sixth one has a wild boar's face. And then there's another one with a bear's face, so perhaps connected to Sasquatch or Bigfoot. We don't know. But certainly a bear's face is interesting when you look like that. There's a vulture's face or an eagle's face, just as you take that word eagle as it gets translated, it can mean vulture or it can mean eagle, and they're kind of listed as the same species of, the same family, same kind of the birds group. You also have a, I think that's most of the different kinds that they have, and then they get into the multi-headed ones after that.
Oh, wow.
So, and then you have also, gods in India and Southeast Asia that were monkey gods and ape gods as well. So all sorts of different faces that are out there that is drawn on to create these superheroes of old. And if there were giants and these creatures before the flood, and then again after the flood, we're going to see that in the end time again, because it's going to be like the days of Noah. What was will be again.
Yeah. So I had a couple things to say here, Gary. So when you were just backpedaling a little bit, when you're talking about the dog, the Cenocephali, one of the things that I read about a while ago that was pretty interesting to me when I dug into it is there was a saint by the name of Saint Christopher who is been depicted more in history up until recently as a dog-headed being. And when I first heard, saw a little article about it, I'm like, this is just probably some kind of symbolism for something. But when you digged into it, this guy had, there's armor and clothing that it's shaped like it's real. Like, why would you go out of your way to make a bunch of fake dog-headed helmets?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Do you think he was a real thing?
Yeah, I think so. And he was converted to Christianity.
So how does that work?
And he was a mercenary out of North Africa who was fighting against the Romans.
Wow. In your opinion, how does that work? Because, we don't know everything, but I would just assume that if you're part of that, you're just exiled from heaven no matter what. But I guess not, I don't know, but,
So the background is Christopher was in the time of Emperor Diocletian, and he was captured in combat in west of Egypt in Cyrenaica, and part of and some other ones will have him as a Berber or a Marmacae bird or Berber, but he was depicted and then convicted as being of enormous size, so giant-like, with the head of a dog instead of a man, and was the normal characteristics of the Marmacae. So
it don't sound like nobody was going to mess with him.
And the Byzantine depiction of Saint Christopher is dog-headed. That is the Greek Orthodox Church. They still represent him to this day. And as you take sort of his original name back in etymological terms, it's connected back to Canaeus and a Canaanite and to Canine. So his skull is kept apparently at a museum of sacred art and St. Justine's Church, Sveti Justina in Rab, Croatia. So apparently they still have it on display.
My gosh. And no one hasn't done any tests on this thing to see what the DNA comes from. I'm pretty sure they have, but they ain't really talking about it. That's just crazy to me, Gary. Like, they have a giant dog head and no one bats an eye.
Yeah. Nobody bats an eye on it. And I think it's been sanitized through the Roman part of the church after the split in 1000 AD to not have a dog saint, right? Now, here's a little prayer. Prayer 93 of St. Gregory Nereg's Book of Lamentations to the Oriental Orthodox Prayer Thread, section L. In the groups, they're described as dog-headed giants. So I'll just read it to the people, just an excerpt out of it. It won't take long. This miraculous oil brings the blessing of light to the Jew and the Gentile, the Indian and the barbarian, the Scythian and the Greek, the cruel, savage, and the fearsome dog-headed giants, the freeborn master and the slave by birth. making them Christians, baptizing in your name, dedicating them to your Holy Spirit, and adopting them as the true sons of your Heavenly Father. So this is a prayer about the ongoing practice of recognizing these fierce, savage, dog-headed giants and then converting them to Christianity, just as St. Christopher was.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm pretty sure at that point nobody ain't gonna mess with any Christian with a couple dog bodyguards walking around, man. That sounds terrifying. I ain't trying to fight none of those things, man. Wow, that's very, very, very interesting. And I also heard with these dog things that one of the biggest populations, I believe it was, I think it was Marco Polo that talked about this. He said the biggest population was in India, and he goes into detail, into detail their customs, how they dress, how they eat. Apparently, they did sign language. They bark like dogs. They would cook their food on hot rocks. They had their own politics, everything. They had their own way of laws. They weren't stupid, So I thought that was really crazy.
And he also mentioned another location. It was an island filled with dogmen.
Oh man, sounds like West Hollywood to me.
Yeah, and another historian, Giovanni, he wrote about these armies of Ogadai Khan, and they came from these dogmen that fought in that war with Ogadai Khan, came from the island, and he actually names the island as Angenain, Anganain. I have no idea where that would have been, but
yeah, sounds really weird.
Yeah. It's just crazy, the stuff that's out there.
No, it sounds like you're talking about an X-Men make-believe stuff, but this stuff is 100% real. And for the people that just can't get a grip, you can disagree with us, but you'd be wrong. It's not one of those things where I'm right if I no, you're going to be wrong if you disagree, because they're doing it today. They're already openly admitting they're doing hybrid chimera experiments. Like you said, there's nothing new under the sun. The Bible's very clear about that. So we already been seeing, 20 years ago, they grew a human ear on a rat's back. They're making a half pig, half monkey embryos to supposedly for the reason to make us organs, which is a bunch of crap. So yeah, all that stuff is 100% real. And the people that can't get a grip, it's very easy. You can just look it up. The same people that you put your trust in are the same people that are telling you that they're doing this. So that's one thing that you can look into. And one other thing I wanted to get into before we move on, when you were talking about Icarus, and you said no one really knows what it looks like, but because I've watched a lot of superhero stuff growing up as a kid, not just the American ones, but I watched a lot of Japanese anime, and anime is filled with demonic imagery all over the place. Dragon this, dragon that, demon this, demon this. But in all the cartoons I've seen of Japanese anime, there's sometimes a character named Icarus, and he is always depicted as a purple dragon. I thought that's very interesting that you brought that up, because I didn't know what Icarus was until you told me right now. I had an idea that he's some kind of ancient deity, but I never really knew that there was a mystery how he looked. But I just think it's crazy how everyone chose to draw him from different cartoons as a purple dragon.
Yeah, so you get two different kinds of mighties described in the New Testament. Outside of the book of Revelation, it'll be dunamis, but then those mighty angels in the book of Revelation has a different Greek word, which is Icarus. And I don't know why there's a distinction other than I'm thinking there's two different orders of these mighty angels.
Okay, interesting. So I kind of want to get into like the mainstream about it now, like since we covered all the groundwork that you just did. How I was telling you how they're making these movies, and the background stories are changing a lot. They're making everything, they're making everything more supernatural now, their origin stories. So one thing that just came out recently, less than 2 years ago, is Iron Man. Iron Man's origin story has completely changed. They changed it into a whole new comic book. And let me just read a little paragraph for you now, who Iron Man has become. So The current Avengers run has seen Tony Stark embarking on an adventure through time, trying to unravel the mystery of an Iron Man helmet that appears to be thousands of years old in Avengers number 31. Stark encountered Mephisto, the Marvel Comics equivalent of the devil himself, who revealed that Stark's father, Howard, made a pact with him years ago. He promised Mephisto that once he had become the most intelligent being on Earth, he would give him his firstborn son. So we're basically saying that Iron Man is now the Antichrist in the Marvel comic books. And it's a comic book they started 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago. So now his whole background has changed. So basically what I just read is that Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark, I believe his name is, the origin story is now that he did some kind of seance, manifested this demon called Mephisto, and he said, I want to be the smartest, richest man in the world, blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, you do that for me, but you got to bear my first son. I basically get to inhabit your body when you make love to your wife, and that child's going to be mine, which is the Antichrist. So now you have Tony Stark is now the Antichrist in the Avengers. And when you think about it, he fits the description before this was even made up. He's rich. He has all the technology. He has ears everywhere with the technology, because I do believe Satan or Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, the Antichrist, when he comes back, he's going to be connected to this technology. So I kind of thought that was kind of crazy how they all kind of connected that, because that's what I always pictured as the Antichrist would be, as someone, and just in my opinion, someone who is supernatural with powers, but it's through technology. Like maybe he's connected with some kind of super, robotics in his body, and he can do multiple things, probably along with DNA enhancement. So I thought that was very interesting that they started off a whole new background story for Tony Stark. Yeah,
interesting. And the allegories that they seem to be laying in there, you look at, iron takes great heat to do the mixture and the alloys to make the iron. And, you have the lake of fire.
Yeah.
That is where the devil and his angels are going to be going to forever to be punished after the end time. And you have Hail El, as in Hail El Ben Shakar, where it's translated in the KJV as Lucifer, son of the morning. It's the Hebrew word Hail El. And he's the god of hell.
Yeah.
The lake of fire. And hell, as we get that translated into English, has become a conflation of several different terms that include the pit prison, that include Sheol or Hades, and then the lake of fire. And they're all separate different places. As we're talking about this connection of being Iron Man as being the son of a demon and possesses a man who produces an offspring with a woman, you can look at that as was it really the demon, or was it really the human that was having sex? You could go sort of either way in that understanding. Yeah. But also understand that Antichrist is also called the son of perdition, the son of the fiery death of destruction of perdition. So he's the son of that. So they're connecting that from a biblical thing. And then in Daniel 2, you have this prophecy of this giant of the beast empires, symbolizing to me, and I go through this a lot in book 2, that the beast empires are run by the offspring of the giants, and they all have Antichrist wannabes that are running that. And as you go from gold down to iron, which was the old Roman Empire, and it starts with the Babylonian head of gold for the beast empires, noting Assyria and Egypt would have been before. You have another one that rises in the end time for these 10 kings. And these 10 kings are iron and clay. So clay is typically sort of understood as humans, as Adam meaning clay, and red clay specifically in miry clay. You take that back to Hebrew. And then you get this really weird passage in the end time as an extension out of these 10 kings, out of the metallic empires, another of the seventh empire, as the book of Revelation talks about, or the fifth empire in the book of Daniel. Daniel 2:42 says this, or in 2:43. So I won't read 2:42, but it says, whereas thou mixest iron with miry clay, they, the kings of this end time empire and a lower bloodline form of this beast empires of kings, so it starts with more pure blood and more mixture with humans so that they don't go extinct, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So what's interesting is you get that they're going to mix their seed. And what you could also take that back to Hebrew with the understanding that it might mean also possession, or it might mean both, that there's a demon possession that's part of the descendants of these bloodline kings, and that in the occult, they believe that they're going to present Antichrist out of their royal bloodlines. And of course, there's many rivals around the world. So all of this speaks to the same kind of allegory, and it's just absolutely stunning. And what's also interesting is that these terrible ones are going to be destroyed in Isaiah 25 in the end time on a mountain. And this is the branch of the terrible ones that I was referring to Ezekiel 32 as being those ones that were slain for the terrible things that they did on earth. And these are all Rephaim beast kings who are speaking to Pharaoh, along with the mighty in this location that they're speaking from, or El, or the fallen angels in the pit prison, and the terrible ones are in the sides of the pit prison in cells, and that these are the ones that are speaking to another beast king. These are the terrible ones, and it's the branch of these terrible ones that's going to be destroyed on a mountain in the end time in Isaiah 25. And then you get another interesting passage about this bloodline, as it talks about in Psalms 21, 8 through 10. And the preamble is talking about the time of God's anger and his wrath, which of course is the year of the Lord's wrath. And in verse 10, it goes through and it says, their fruit shalt thou destroy from the earth, and their seed from among children of men. So there's a bloodline, whether it's existing ones or new ones going to be recreated as we go into the new days of Noah in the fig tree generation that I think that we're in. So yeah, that allegory, they're telling us what they're going to do or going to try and do all the time. That's what all of their entertainment does. And we just have to understand what their plan is. And again, these are telling wonderful entertainment stories, but the deeper meaning is what the occultists and the adepts understand, and they just laugh at the mundane humans who have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, we're eating it all up. Like, oh, this is cool. Let me go dress up as Thor and worship him, and have no idea what you're doing. People really don't like. Nothing. From what I've learned in my experience, no story comes from nothing. Like, for example, if I were to make up my own villain, like a creature, and I said it has, okay, this thing has bat wings and it has a dragon head and all these things I'm making up, I learned it from something. I just, the dragon head because I seen it. You know what I mean? So everything that you see is not made up. It comes from something. Yeah, exactly. So you can't really get away from this stuff.
Angelic technology of old that we're just starting to catch up to today. And Thor is the son of Odin.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also, he got the power of thunder and lightning. It kind of brings me back to that verse in the Bible. I saw Satan fall like lightning. I think that's connected right there, like some kind of symbology, allegory type of thing. And just in my opinion, back me up here, Gary. Do you think I'm close on that, or with the whole God of thunder?
I think, when Jesus said he saw, and I think it's connected to Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 with the fall of Satan, and he fell like thunder. I mean, he had power and weaponry, right?
Yeah.
And so this destructive power that the gods had the ability to destroy the earth. And maybe it did.
Yeah.
And maybe it was renewed. That's a whole different train of thought. But the demigods also had angelic technology. In the book of Enoch, not biblical, but in the book of Enoch, it talks about Azazel as the leader of the Watchers, who taught all the arts of war and the art and the craft of war and the manufacturing of weapons. And so everything from how to do weaponry, how to wage battle, including the martial arts, all came from Azazel as the scapegoat, who was sent to the pit prison in the book of Enoch and would be Abaddon and Apollyon, as we would understand that as the destroyer coming out. So all of that has its connections back into what was going on before. And so the weapons were typically made for the demigods, the offspring of humans and fallen angels, to help along with the superpowers provided. And those were typically made by the elementals, which we also know in the New Testament that help hold us in bondage on the earth as part of the invisible ones, and these are the little ones. So you see that again, that show up sort of in like the Lord of the Rings, and the Lords of the Rings are giant kings of the round tables of the of the earth, and the little ones like the dwarves, they were living in mountains in the earth, and they made weapons for the demigods, highly technologically advanced weaponry for them. Every type of the elemental, and there's three groups of elementals in the little ones, and the fourth one is salamander, and they're larger than humans, and they are more reptilian-like. But these little ones, whether or not it's gnomes or it's leprechauns, they all had a specific role in the visible hierarchy in the antediluvian world. And if those creatures are still around today, they still have a specific role. But it was the dwarves that made the weapons for the giants.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also give you even more crazy stuff, because Lord of the Rings to me has always been like, man, this is what I feel like what antediluvian age looked like, before the flood. Like how everything was going down. You got all these different races. You got the elves, you got the giants, you got all these different creatures at war with each other. And to top it off, I don't know if you caught up on the new show. It's a Lord of the Rings show, came out like 2 years ago now, I think, on Amazon Prime. Now check this out. Now Gandalf the Grey, they go into the origins of it. So they're going back in Lord of the Rings now. And guess how Gandalf got to Earth? He fell from the sky like a meteor, like a lightning bolt. So that's how he gets to Earth. Boom. He looks like a big asteroid, right? And the little elves like, what's that? And they go check it out. And it's a man. And not only is he big, he's a big guy compared to the halflings, right? But he's also a giant. He's bigger than the humans. So you have a giant falling from heaven in the new Lord of the Rings.
Well, and one of the allegories for Satan in the occult is the great wizard. Right?
Oh, wow.
Because he has all the knowledge and the powers. And so when they're going to see in the Wizard of Oz, to see the great wizard, I mean, it's the same kind of allegory at who's kind of at the top, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all interesting. And, fairy tale and the fairy tale culture, as we talk about that, these are the Tuatha De Danann, the fair folk. As part of the allegory of giants, and also understood as the matriarchal bloodline, as the fairy bloodline and the owl bloodline versus the dragon and the raven bloodline for the patriarchal bloodline. And in the fairy culture, these opalescent beings are rebellious opalescent beings that come from another planet or another dimension, and they create giants when they get here. And these are the shining giants, but they're not opalescent because they're obviously physical beings. They're known as the Tuatha De Danann, and 1,000 other different transliterations and spellings for the same people in history and mythology. And these are the ones that are described in the Lord of the Rings. These are the white elves. These are the white fairy folk, and they're larger. They're just not depicted as full-blown giants in there. And, Lord of the Rings, it's the Ring Lords. It's the Ring culture.
Is any of that related to King Solomon with the ring in the Bible, controlling the demon, whatever that is? I'm not too sure exactly.
Well, that's not in the Bible.
It's in other one, right?
Apocryphal.
Yeah, the Apocrypha. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And we don't know, again, I mean, it's interesting. I think Solomon had a lot of knowledge and power of God, and he probably could control the demons. Whether or not he used them to build the temple, probably not, but maybe he did. But biblically, we're not told that. So that's why I start to separate. It's interesting, but I can't really sort of rely on it.
Yeah, I get it.
That's where I sort of part on it. And
still interesting,
again, you
though.
can't totally dismiss it either, right?
Yeah, it's just very interesting that you just have these so much similarities, because even in Lord of the Rings, there's two wizards at war, Solomon and Gandalf the Grey. So you even have the same name as the...
Yeah. Well, the occult, they draft Solomon as a great magi, as a great wizard.
Okay.
And he's part of them drafting patriarchs out of the Bible, and his knowledge is that gnosis, is the Gnostic religion of knowledge. It is, and controlling those powers. So they turned him into this great black magician in the secret societies of the Gnostic religion. So. And again, we know Solomon, he wasn't perfect in his ways by any stretch of the imagination, but I struggle with the fact that he would be, a black magician, as what the Gnostics would draft him in to be. So I don't think that's the case at all. But there's an overlap there. It's just there's some additions on there that we want to be a little bit careful with. And back with the Lord of the Rings and with your assessment of it being before the flood, I agree with that 100%. And at the end of the Lord of the Rings, you have this allegory that sort of wraps it all up. You have all of these creatures before the flood. They're sailing away in a boat on the water because now it's the time of man.
Oh, that's right. In the new show. So in the show, there's like this other dimension that's like at the end of the world. Like they just get in a boat and they just go out to and it's like a big light. It looks like heaven. And when they get there, no one ever comes back. So you don't know if you're going to somewhere nice or not. And even in the show, you don't get the answer. You're waiting for season 2, but you just don't know because no one comes back.
Yeah. And that's the home of the gods is Sheol.
Yeah.
Hades. It's their heaven, and that's just in another dimension, and that's everything that they're telling you. So in the occult, people will go back and forth through portals and gateways and or using technology all of the time. So, and again, that's very much similar to the Egyptian death ritual of the royals, where they would sail in a boat on a river to the underworld, right?
Yeah. Yeah, all that stuff is everything that goes along with Lord of the Rings. So far everything that I've read that's fantasy or probably the wrong word to use, but because it's kind of true. But out of all these superhero stuff, fantasy stuff, the one that has been closest to me that will like, man, that's probably how it was back in those days is Lord of the Rings. That's like the only one that I could be like, man, that's got to be the closest thing spot on. And it's written so good, and I think it's written so good because it's based off of real history. That's just my opinion.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at Tolkien and his friend Lewis, they're not Christians.
Oh, heck no. They're a bunch of libs.
They were a part of the elite part of society, educated at Oxford. And somehow they joined this inkling organization, which is a Rosicrucian order. And they're not said to be part of secret societies. Well, Rosicrucian is higher than Freemasonry, it's higher than Illuminati, and it's the intersection of the Royal Masonic bloodlines with the purebloods operating the top half and ones rising up lower blood levels at the lower half of the Rosicrucians, and then you go right into the Royal orders above that. So there's no way that you could have somebody not as an adept part of a Rosicrucian society, even though there's 3 different levels, and you could say they're bringing some people in just for the arts. Well, that's not the case. They're there to learn the writing craft. They already had the knowledge. And so I have a 6-part series on Tolkien and Lewis, and in 5 and 6, I take their bloodlines back to the Royals.
Oh,
so
really?
I'll give you and then in parts 1 to 4, I just go through and show you how they're not Christians and the things that they're talking about. This is all occult history that they they were taught from childhood, and with the Royals, they are an adept well before 18. And so they would have been higher than the Rosicrucians. They were just there to learn the writing craft. And they can't take adepthood until they're between 25 and 30. So you don't have any of them shown as visibly being part of Freemasonic organizations because they were well beyond that by the time they're probably 10 years old. And the levels go so high, I have no idea. I've told in the old system where you have first level adept at third degree, which is equivalent to a 33rd degree York rite, that third degree level, when you go up to managing the lodges, you have to be fifth degree. And then I'm told somewhere around 7 is for the Rosicrucian level. And they have all of these other ones where you're initiated from childhood, where I've been told there's as many as 100 of those degrees. Now, that could be just 33 of them multiplied by 3 again, just as the Scottish Rite takes the 3 and multiplies by 11 on that. Or, I mean, whatever machination of the sacred numerology that they get. All I know is there's way more than 7 degrees, and that they were there just to learn the writing craft. So they had the knowledge. They just needed to know how to get the skills to write it. And it's very similar to the writing societies that Francis Bacon created as a Rosicrucian. Okay. And he was mentored by can't come up with his name right now. It doesn't really matter. As a 007, it doesn't matter. Anyways, Francis Bacon formed the Knights of the Helmet Society and the Spear Shaker Society to develop the new English that was going to be used in the King James Version Bible. And he was a prolific writer himself. And they say he never published, but a lot of people think he was actually the true writer for Shakespeare, who probably received the name from the Spear Shaker Society. And the Spear Shaker goes back to Apollo and Athena as the ones who patronized the arts. And she had a spear that she would shake as part of the weapons of the gods. So it's the same sort of MO that's happened all throughout, where you get this writing that's controlled by the occult talking about their history.
So what do you think, your opinion, Gary? I know this is kind of off subject, but I got to ask you while I have you here, because you're the guy that these kind of questions could be answered. So, this guy, if me and you can both agree, Sir Francis Bacon wasn't exactly, the best, role model for a Christian, right? I heard stories that he was also homosexual, possibly, stuff like that. I also heard that he put his face over Jesus, and that's who we see most of the time. So with all those little things, I can go into detail. That's enough right there to be like, this guy's, has some interesting background. And he's the one that apparently helped translate the Bible. And a lot of people like to argue, well, this guy was evil, so, the translation is wrong. What do you say to those people? Like, how do you break that down, or your opinion on it?
Well, there was a great team of translators and well-educated people. But at that time, that'd be the nobility. They probably were all polytheists for the most part. There might have been a few Christians on there, but probably not that many. But where Francis Bacon comes in on it is he has provided the manuscript and keeps it for like 8 to 10 months, where he does his own edits and revisions to it before it's signed off on by the mighty Prince James, the Gabor Royale.
A good way to put it.
Who wrote 5 books on demonology as an apologetics. He wrote a trilogy on it. So
I have one of those books. I have the first one, the demonology book. I have it.
Yeah. And he's a Royale. So, I think there's a possibility. And Hall, he said, one of the great adept Masons of Freemasonry said there's, the Bible is loaded with markers. I don't think what they did for changes a whole lot for Christians in there. I think there's some dubious translations, no doubt about that. And one of the reasons why I ended up, for my own satisfaction, is to take the New Testament and the Old Testament and take that back to the original Hebrew for the Old and original Greek for the New Testament, so that I could understand the translations. And you have the unicorn in there in the Bible that it is translated from wild bull, and they put a unicorn in there, which we would understand the imagery as a single-horned horse.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, the horse of Nephilim and the angelic being as a cherubim. So when he has on his coat of arms, he has a unicorn and a lion. Those are the celestial mafia godfather taciturn imagery for that royal house. Hanover had 2 unicorns on there for the Windsors. So it's not unusual to have a dragon or a serpent on there, or an eagle on there. I mean, you have to understand how they do the allegories and the imagery. So that unicorn is used in terms of Mount Hermon connections and to the prophecies to Ephraim to become a great nation who's going to gore the nations as a unicorn all around the world. And Francis Bacon was the biggest proponent to starting the exploration of the New World to create that mighty kingdom for King James. And so everything sort of comes together that, yes, they've got some markers in there. They got Lucifer in there instead of Halel. You wouldn't transfer Michael as its meaning.
Yeah.
It's just translated, or Gabriel, but yet Halel has got an Italian word connected to Venus and light and lux for Halel into the English language for a Hebrew word. It makes no sense. But Lucifer is the god of the Gnostics and the Freemasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got and I put a few translations of Masons in the New Testament that seems like a little bit dubious translation as well. In my new book, I put that in. And, you've got, some things like, let's say, Easter in Acts 12:4. And it shouldn't be translated as Easter. It should be Passover. The Greek word is Pascha. People say, wow, no, of course it should be Easter because the Jewish people turned polytheist by that time. Well, it's a short time after the crucifixion, so we have no record saying that they were polytheist then. But in 12:3, it's talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So if they're polytheists and we're no longer celebrating the Passover, but the Easter festival, why are they celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread? It's a bad translation. And there's lots of bad translations, but none of it really changes the meaning a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about it. But all the Bible translations have a few issues. But again, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But do expect, as we get closer to the last 7 years, that they will use their markers to deceive humans.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just about to get into that. I really don't believe in my heart. I truly believe in my heart that if they were really trying to corrupt it to a point where it's just unreadable, I don't think God will allow it anyways.
Yeah. They were very crafty, so to speak, in some of the things that they would use. And so you get assigned as an initiate to Freemasonry certain passages to study that they'll learn and develop as they rise through the different degrees.
Yeah. So with that being said, I want to tell you another revamp of a story because Marvel and DC, they're getting dark, Gary. I mean, they're getting dark. Now, let me show you how dark this is. So this is one of the most interesting comic books I've ever read from Marvel. And I even bought myself a copy just to go back to it. So when I talk about this kind of stuff, like, man, look at this. So the comic book is called Old Man Logan, which is Wolverine, right? So in this story, it's called Old Man Logan because he is way past his prime. I think he's like, I don't know, he's like 400 years old or something like that. But like in this story, he's like, because he ages slower, he's like in the body of like a 75-year-old, right? but he could still kind of fight. But anyways, long story short, this thing takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. So something happened where everybody, so what happened was all the villains made a plan to surprise attack all the superheroes and take them all out. So just about all of them got killed except for Wolverine, Hawkeye, and a few other ones, right? So the way the story starts off is that Wolverine, in his later years, he has a wife and a few kids, and they're living out on a ranch. Everybody in the world's barely surviving. The only people that are living better are the villains, and the villains have all the control. So believe it or not, this is where it gets crazy. It is all biblical to me, the way it's described, these enemies. So the Hulk, right, he ends up having a kid with his cousin, incest, right, the She-Hulk. And the reason why he has to make babies with his incest, with his cousin, is because, and this is how it's written in the comic book without getting vulgar, is that because a regular human can't take the strength of the sex with the Hulk, because he literally killed them and split them in half, right? So that's already biblical to me in that whole description. So check this out. So he has like 3 kids, right? And these 3 kids are these little, Hulks. They're kind of like enforcers. Hey man, you better pay that rent next week or we're just going to come kill you. So the Hulk is sending his sons to go take care of all these people that are alive in this little area that he controls. And Wolverine happens to live in one of these areas. So the kids go to Wolverine's house and they're like, hey man, rent's due. And Wolverine's like, well, it's not due for a couple weeks. And then they're like, I don't care. We want it sooner, says the boss, which is Hulk, Bruce Banner. And Wolverine's, all right, man, just relax. I'll get your money. So he's kind of freaking out because this is post-apocalyptic world. You don't pay in cash. You have to pay in supplies, water, whatever, So Wolverine's freaking out. And long story short, he's like, man, I need to make money somehow or, make supplies somehow to pay these guys, so I could protect my family. So he ends up running into Hawkeye. Hawkeye's also older already too. And they're in the Spider-Mobile. And Hawkeye's like, look, I know you need money, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I have to drive all the way to New York. And I believe they're in California. So I have to go literally across the country. So Wolverine's, okay, man, I'll go there. I need the money. I'll help you out. And at this time, Wolverine no longer wants to fight anymore. Like, he doesn't want to use his claws. He keeps them locked in. I guess in the story, he's had them locked in for about 10 years because something happened where someone took over his brain and he thought he was fighting his enemies when really he was killing his teammates, his X-Men. So he has this like big trauma where he doesn't want to use them no more because he killed all his friends by accident. So they go all the way to, I'll just cut down the story. They're going through there and America's leveled. And the funny thing is the only thing that's left with civilization and somewhat order and it's all fenced up is Texas. Texas is the only state left and it's its own country now, right? Everything's nuked. There's craters everywhere. So they're passing by. They see Daredevil and a couple superheroes they caught and they're tying them up and they're crucifying them, right? And they have these big chimera dinosaurs that the scientists made, and after they crucify them, they get eaten. And Wolverine, all of them are watching this. So they finally get to New York, however long it takes, and the leader of America is the Red Skull. And Red Skull has his whole office decorated with Captain America's head, his shield. He has Iron Man's head. Like, he's just like a straight monster, he's just showing his power. Wolverine ends up killing him, trying to cut the story down to get to the point. So when he gets back to go pay his debt, the Hulk of all, the Hulk, we grew up with the Hulk as him just being an angry man and he's cool when he's not angry, right? No, man, not this new Hulk and his kids. The Hulk ended up cannibalizing his whole family, right? This is like Bible, like giants, cannibalizing, all this stuff. And they're also very grotesque, they're very sexual, they're like they're lusting. So not only are they eating people, they're also molesting people. So all that stuff, I'm like, man, this is a comic book from Marvel. So I had to look it up. And yeah, it's a legit comic book. It's it's published by Marvel, and it blew my mind that it has all this like dark imagery now. And when you're looking at the pictures, it's not PG-13. This is rated R. You see bodies getting torn in half, and the Hulk is like, he's basically a Nephilim. He lusts, incest, and he's eating humans and he's raping them and eating them. It's crazy.
So, yeah. So it's standard polytheist doctrine here. And so there are, it's a dualist religion. And so what we're told for the most part, the dualism is that there's good and evil that fights perpetually forever. And in their belief system, God is the evil one and Satan is the good one looking after humankind's better interest. But because they're both powerful angels and equal, there's never an end to this war. But there's a macro dualism within, or micro dualism within their belief system. So the first one was macro, the inner one, the micro, is that within their belief system, there are white hats and there are black hats. There are good magicians, there are evil magicians. There are good witches, there are evil witches. There is white magic, there is black magic, there is good Nephilim, there is evil Nephilim. So just as Hercules would have fought with evil Nephilim, that's part of the dualism. Understand, though, they all worship the same pantheon. And so as we see it playing out in our world, you may want to pay attention to the word white hats as it comes up, and they're the ones who are said to have humankind's better interest at heart, that they don't want to wipe us from the face of the earth, and they want us to live decent lives, and it's the black hats who want to destroy us. Except that they both have the same agenda at the end. They just are playing a role, and it's like cattle herding us into a specific kind of direction. Now, play into that is that you have Abaddon and Apollyon who are coming out as the destroyer gods, the destroyer god in the end time, which I think is Azazel, but has an equivalent to Shiva in the Indian pantheon as the destroyer god. And that this destroyer god destroys world. But that's how it recreates a new world, is it destroys the old and recreates something new out of the old ashes. It's the same imagery within the polytheist religions with the phoenix rising up out of the ashes. So they don't care whether they destroy this world, because both the white hats and the dark hats in the polytheist tradition, they don't want a world with humans. They want a world designed for them where they can worship and have their gods walk amongst us again. And they don't care if they destroy this whole world, because what's left is they're going to have bodies and whatever created for them within this physical world to live in this world with the fallen angels who would have won this world as a realm on their own through this battle. But that doesn't mean that dualism goes away. So you have this perpetual ongoing within the earth, even if there's just the giants that are left, the offspring of the fallen angels. There are good ones and evil ones that will be fighting perpetually ongoing. And that's exactly what they're doing. And it's very, very similar to the Doctor Strange analogy in their, at least in the first movie anyways, where you have this evil, dark Lord of the universe, that these Rosicrucian, these priest-like, these adept-like occult Jedi, mixing in another one of the science fiction movies out there, they're using technology, science, magic, going through in different portals and dimensions, and they're trying to win this war against this Dark Lord to have a realm on their own, which is the earth. That's the realm that the fallen angels want and wanted, that when Satan rebelled, he wanted to be like God. And he knew he couldn't defeat God.
Yeah.
But he was hoping that the rebellion, they would get a negotiated peace where he would have a realm on his own, and that would be this earth. And the Bible tells us he is the God of this world. He is the prince of this world. Satan is for a time longer. So again, all of that storytelling is telling us the destruction that's coming in the end time that Revelation talks about, that these 10 kings are going to bring about, and along with Antichrist. These are all destructions that doesn't come from God. It comes from within, from the people running this world.
Yeah. And, just how you were saying earlier, how they kind of switched the story around, how, God's the bad guy because he puts all these rules on us, and the devil's the cool guy. You can do whatever you want as long as it makes you happy. with all that being said, I don't know how far you are on these superhero movies, but I don't know if you remember they made an Avengers movie called I don't know, it's like 5 of them now, but I think it's like part 3. Is when they Thanos, Thanos with the gauntlet.
Yep.
So I thought this whole thing was like kind of like making like an allegory or like some kind of symbology, making God evil, because in my opinion, when I saw that movie, Thanos was like, he was like God, but they made him a bad guy because he had that glove and he kind of did a rapture. He snapped his fingers and he took out half the universe and just kind of raptured everybody, right?
Yep.
And then I just told you that the new Antichrist is Iron Man, and guess who comes to save the world and sacrifices himself from all that? Iron Man, because Iron Man dies. And I saw that, I was like, that right there, that's too close to home for me, buddy. You know what I mean?
As we get closer to the end time, the last 7 years in the Fig Tree generation, they're becoming more aggressive and more obvious and in your face with the entertainment. They're preparing the world for what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ultimately they won't win, but they think they can win. They've been deluded by their gods that they can actually win.
Yeah. I know we're kind of running a little high on time, so really quick, I want you to just do one more for me. Can you just break down to the audience of how close Alistair Crowley is of this character, Doctor Strange, and how it evolved from this to Doctor Strange, and it's literally Alistair Crowley.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that say it's based on him, but you could pick multiple people to do that.
Yeah, no kidding. But he literally looks like him the way they draw it.
He does, yes. He does have that look, and he believes he was funneling Horus through him, which would be in a demonic sort of influence. And you have Alistair Crowley. He's part of the Rosicrucian Society, the Golden Dawn Order. And this Golden Dawn is that dawn of their new order that they're trying to create on Earth. And he's also part of the Thelemic ideology, do as you will, as they would understand it. And it comes from the Greek word theleme, which means God's will. And we also have a couple of mistranslations that I will also cover off in book 2, where that word is not translated as will. It's actually translated as sexual crimes, biblically. So in the New Testament. So this is that whole order that they're trying to bring about, to have a realm of their own. And it's all using the technology and the sciences, the 7 sciences that I talk about, and the angelic technology to bring all of this about. So science is part of the occult religions. So the 7 sciences created the original Enochian mysticism, as I like to call it, that Enoch, son of Cain, separated this knowledge into those 7 disciplines. And then to keep that knowledge away from the Sethites, they created mystical religions and a bull cult and a sun cult within this initiatory degree educated system, that they didn't want the true secrets of the most powerful knowledge in the hands of the Sethites and the mundane. So this is all the imagery that's floating around, and everything else that is involved is the manifestation from that reign of the gods and the reign of the wizards, so to speak, or the sorcerers that are utilizing this knowledge to literally reap destruction, because they're fighting a war in the physical world, and it's the physical world that gets destroyed. It's akin to the destruction of the world that the angels did in the Vedas. So they're wrapping all of that in their various stories. I don't know whether I got to quite the things that you were looking for, but that's sort of the overview snapshot.
No, absolutely. Like What you're saying is a little piece that people could just grasp and go do the research themselves. And maybe we can have a part 2 to this and kind of break it down, because I do know, what I've read with it is that this guy, not only is it, this guy looks like him, he has the same story, but then you have the Scarlet Witch too. That's also a character in the Marvel, but it's also connected to Doctor Strange, which is also the same Scarlet Witch, right? That's in the Bible, Revelation, I believe. So like it's a huge connection, and it'll probably take like a whole hour to break that down, but we're running out of time. But man, Gary, I learned a lot today. I actually really enjoyed this. I would love to do a part 2. It's very interesting because I'm just learning stuff about things that I thought were innocent as a kid, you just see it as, maybe this nice guy just had a rough childhood and he got bullied and he made Superman. No, man, it goes way more deeper than that, to the name, to the outfit, to everything. So thank you for coming on the show, Gary, and, giving us and the audience, more to think about. You got to really watch what you watch and, really pay attention to what you put your energy into, because what you put into it, you get back out. And sometimes it's not always a good. So I really appreciate you, Gary, for coming on the show. As always, it's always a blessing. And, my payback to you is buying all your books and, always reading them. And actually, I just ordered the book right now, because what's another 2 days? I'll get paid in 2 days anyway. So I just ordered it right now, because when you told me all those other things right there, I definitely want to get back into it. Even though I could probably read your first book 10 more times and learn just as much, but because like you said, it's like your book is like kind of like a Bible kind of thing. Every time you read it, you miss something and you learn something new. So all the audience, man, pick up Gary Wayne's book, the first one. And even though I haven't read the second one, I have no doubt in my mind that one's just going to be just as good, if not even better. So really quick again, Gary, just for all the audience, maybe some people are lazy and don't listen to the intros. Give them the information where to find your stuff again one more time. Yes.
So the best place to get a hold of me and ask me a question, or maybe get some of the documents I might have mentioned on the show today. And if you do that request for a document, name it by topic, because I'll forget what I had said on all the different shows that I do. So you go to Genesis6conspiracy.com. That's www.genesis6 with the number 6conspiracy.com. On that website, there's a contact the author. And that's my email. It's also Genesis6conspiracy@gmail.com. So, but you just need to click on that. That will come through to me. It might take me a little over a month to get back to you, but I will get back to you. I have a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book 1. And a generous chapter of all 84 chapters of book 2. And if you think that's all the information that I generously supply, it is a drop in the bucket. There's that much information that's in both of those books, and you'll get a good feel for the books, whether those books are right for you or not. Just the table of contents ought to get your attention. And book 2 is designed specifically for Christians. It goes deeper into the Bible than any other book that's out there. It is absolutely unique. As book 1 is unique, this is unique in a different way. And if you want to know about the angelic order, loyal and disloyal, if you want to know about all the different giants that are listed in the Bibles and taking them back to their specific patriarchs, I do that even with the hybrids. I also go through all of the not the angelic wars. I go through the giant wars of Genesis 14 and the wars through the Exodus, also the wars in the Judges, to show you how we know they're dealing with giants and hybrids there, and through King Saul, through King David, and through King Solomon. And then I get into linking how it's important to understand this prehistory, because those terms help to define end-time prophecy. So if you want to know about Babylon, or the great and mighty men, or the scorpion beings coming out of the abyss, you need to understand that this is all part of the prehistory. And then I lay that explanation into end-time prophecy with a chronology that I think you can rely on. And I show you in the preface what my approach is for research and for eschatology. And I think you'll find it amazingly simple, and it takes all of the contradictions away, and you don't have to worry about leaving out passages that might be a little bit inconvenient, because everything will fit.
Thank you very much, Gary. And just really quick for the audience, he ain't lying about the table of contents. Contents. When you're looking at this, I mean, a lot of things just pop out. You have right here. The first section is called the antediluvian epoch, I think that's how you say that word. But then you have right here the golden age. That gets my eye. Then you have the house of dragon pretty much right here. Then you have Atlantis, the serpents, and the fairy tale kingdoms, and all that stuff. All that stuff is interesting to me, ladies and gentlemen. So definitely pick up the first one and the second one, and you will not be disappointed. Again, Gary, thank you so much for coming on. Just stay on really quick. I want to talk to you for like maybe 2 minutes, and
sure,
right after done. All right, everybody, this is the Sabbath at Midnight. I am your host, Lionel Tavares. Dominic is not here right now. He is sick in the hospital. So if you, ladies and gentlemen, can please give him a prayer, because I truly believe in the power of prayer. Just keep him on your mind. My dad is my best friend. He is my hero. I love him very much. So please, I know you guys really don't hear me talk about stuff like this, but it's a lot harder than what my voice is showing. So please say a prayer for him, and God bless him. And everybody else around the world, good night or good morning, whatever the case may be. Right now it's in California, so it is good afternoon. And to everybody around the world who listens to me, thank you very much, and have a good day or morning, whatever the case is around the world.